Warning. This podcast features the truth about owning and operating mobile home parks. The following program is not designed to be sexy. It will not hype you up on MHPs. Rather, this is a raw take on this industry and how you find your own path to success. Welcome to MHP IRL, Mobile Home Parks in Real Life, with your host, Ryan Norris.
Ladies and gentlemen, 4 years in the making. Maxwell Baker is finally
yes,
on Mobile Home Parks in Real Life. True story, dude. I wrote an episode for you 4 freaking years ago, man, in 2018. Obviously it's 2022 as of this recording, but I'm pumped to have you. You've been in this space a long time, longer than I have. So I would assume it's over a decade. But Max, tell everybody who doesn't know who you are, what you do, and the value you bring to our space.
Yeah. So my name is, thanks Ryan for having me. I know it's been quite some time, and it's great to kind of ride the journey and see each other grow the way we've been growing. And congrats to all your success, dude. You're killing it.
Thanks.
And all the continued success to you, man. So I'm really happy for you. But so my name is Maxwell Baker. I own and operate with my wife the Mobile Home Park Broker, which I started in 2009, believe it or not. I had just gotten out of the Marine Corps and was a trumpet player there. And then did some leasing for a while. And then I just said, you know what? It's 2009. The world is burning. Might as well start a brokerage company. So I remember jumping into mobile home park world, and everybody thought I was crazy. And there was my biggest competitor was a guy named Barry Henson that everybody loved dealing with. Oh
yeah.
And I won't say anything negative about him, but he had a colorful personality. And I love talking to him because he's been in the industry for a long time. And so then I just went to work. And, you know, back then, nobody was databasing second tertiary market deals. And I had started out at a pretty national firm, Marcus and Millichap, actually, and stayed there for 4 years. Great training back then before they went public. I don't know how it is now. But yeah, so I started there. And started just going after secondary, tertiary markets because no other broker was really doing it. And started in Georgia and have expanded to about, my goal right now is Texas to North Dakota, all the way up to Maine. So that's what the markets that I'm focusing on. We've got about 25 people on our team. A lot of people in India. We do a lot of virtual. Our whole brokerage company is a virtual company. Never had a physical place other than just when I worked at Marcus, and then when I went over to Lean Associates, and then started my own firm with the wife. And yeah, man. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I do brokerage. Also a park owner. I'm dabbling in some other assets, and I've also got a pretty cool website thing that we are about to go live here, hopefully in February. We're working on the minimal viable product right now, or the MVP. So a lot of stuff I'm really excited about, Ryan. So yeah, that's who I am. Been doing it for a long time, and happy to talk shop with you, man. So thanks for having me.
Pumped to have you. Funny story, Barry Henson, good dude. Ian and I met him right when we got started. We only looked at one deal with him before he rode off into the sunset. He was a funny guy. So we met him right before we retired. And I've got to say, yeah, there was just no one in the space for secondary and tertiary stuff back when I got started in 2015. And Marcus, great shop. We both know them well. Good folks over there. And what I'll say is, man, it is different. Boy, is it different. I mean, my secondary and I have one tertiary that I own get calls, a lot of them. So people are databasing everything. It is a fundamentally different world, man. When you got started, even before I did, because by the time I got involved about 6 years after you got started, man, everybody had already been saying it is a different ball game. And now, relative to when I got started, it's a different ball game, and I'm sure it's
Yeah.
going to evolve from there. But the one thing I've been really impressed with you beyond your branding, which has always been great since I've gotten in the game. I'm sure it took you a while to really get the branding going before I threw my hat in the arena back in 2015. But by the time I got there, yours was excellent and still continues to be. So beyond being just a rock star marketer, the other thing I'll say you've done really well is you've convinced people like me that secondary and tertiary markets aren't so bad.
They're not, man. I mean, everybody was staying away from them until it was what was interesting. What caused the markets to kind of explode was when Trump was elected into the office. He was a big proponent for these markets. He did a lot for these markets. And it's not just my thoughts on it. I've heard it from people from New York, clients, and on the West Coast, and a lot of the stuff that he did for real estate investors and real estate owners and whatnot, and really the people that work in these areas really boosted the economics in those areas. Like I don't really understand I can't remember off the top of my head what all he did. Forgive my ignorance there, or my forgetfulness, I should say. But that was the biggest thing. It was like when he came in the office, we started seeing an immediate flow of money into these areas, and haven't really looked back since, man. I mean, now we put something out on the market in these areas. If it's got some decent cap rate, and especially if it's got owner financing, man, like it's just it's a different world from when I started 2009. I remember when I had a park in Griffin that I was selling. It was 110 spaces, and man, I couldn't even give that thing away. It was like 11 cap, and like nobody on lot rent, and nobody wanted to mess with it. And I was like, man, this thing is a nice park. Like if I were to put that out today, like probably have like 10 offers in the first 24 hours. But like back then, dude, like people would laugh at me. They're like, why are mobile home parks a good, and why is Griffin even a market I should consider? So like I had to like really sell them hard on Griffin, Georgia. And that's like it's like part of the MSA of Atlanta. So it was it's interesting, man. It's a very different game. There's some deals that have come and gone that I kind of kicked myself on, but you can't really do that too much. But meaning like you should have bought them. So from time to time, if you see a deal that's like you can buy and hold on to, then yeah, I mean that's these areas like those secondary tertiary markets have got the biggest upside, because in the primary markets, I mean everybody's going after those deals. Like they've always been, that's what the banks are lending on, that's what institutional is lending on. Like it's easier to buy deals in those markets, and it takes a little bit of work to get the secondary tertiary stuff done. But once you do that, man, I mean, I know guys that I sell a lot of deals to that's all they chase. They don't even mess with primary markets.
Yeah, look, I made a huge push in the last 18 months, 2 years on some secondary markets that I've fallen in love with. Fayetteville, North Carolina, Biloxi, Mississippi, Asheville, North Carolina, which I arguably would call that a primary market just based on how people buy in Asheville, North Carolina, and
It's crazy there.
Many others. Ocala, Florida, another really good one. There's a bunch. Griffin, I wouldn't even consider Griffin secondary, man. That's basically Atlanta. It's like not even that farther south than McDonough. It's really, really nice. But then I can see the argument that back in 2009, it probably was Atlanta just hadn't quite developed out that far. But I mean, there's a ton of manufacturing and stuff there. When you drive off the highway and boom, all of a sudden there's tons of cars and tons of things and going on. So I'm a fan of Griffin as well. But yeah, I echo that sentiment in secondary markets where you can still find opportunities that have reasonable cap rates, reasonable purchase prices, and have still really good demand. So I definitely agree with you there. It's definitely getting a little bit more competitive there. But what's the pitch on a a tertiary market? How can you kind of justify those? I know my
It's
answer, and the
tough.
answer is buy it really cheap. But what?
Yeah, I mean, if you're buying it super cheap and I mean, like you put a lot of test ads out there, and if you're getting a crap load of test ads or responses on your test ad, I should say, then I mean that's kind of proof in the pudding there. Like if it's what's the word I'm looking for? If it's productive enough for you to be like, you know what, I should probably invest some deals over here, and maybe I can get some homes and put them in there, and you're getting calls and you know I know some of the manufacturers now are now offering people to pay for the move into their park in some of these areas. So it's just I mean, people need affordable housing, and right now it's just to be quite frank with you, man, I think it really has to do with what I just said, but there's just a crap load more buyers now coming into the industry. And Dave have done a heck of a job really educating the industry. And you've got other people like Mike Conlon who are big proponents of the industry. I know you know Mike and have done some stuff with him. And I've known Mike since back, I mean, yeah, I've known Mike for a long time. He's kind of a mentor of mine on a lot of different levels. But I mean, in general, like there's just a slew of people coming into it. So when there's money, anytime there's movement, there's going to be wealth bred. So tertiary markets, man, it's just a factor of some of the Trump taxes that Trump did, and there's just more buyers out there looking for returns, and they're willing to work a little bit. Like you go in these markets, you're going to have to work. It's not in a primary market where you just put a sign out and people just show up. Like you got to be creative. You got to create a good system of follow-up. Like it's just, you can get some pretty damn good returns if you're willing to work a little bit and create the system, method, and process that automates much of the management, like we talked about in the last podcast. So I wish I could tell you more, man, but those are really the major ones: is the ease of money and investors coming into the industry, and kind of the Trump economics that really helped out the smaller areas of the country.
I will say, just a quick aside, I found out about mobile home parks through Frank and Dave, and I downloaded we didn't have enough money to go to the boot camp, so we had to do the cheaper version of reading the PDFs. Ian and I did that, and I remember just going, man, this is what I've been looking to get involved with. So kudos to them for all the education that they're doing. I know they're kind of a magnet for a lot of controversy for this reason and that reason. So we'll steer clear of that and just.
Oh man, I love it. I told Dave, I was talking to him, I was like, what's going on with that? He's like, he started getting silent. I was like, dude, PR is good, man. I guarantee you, it's like Wolf of Wall Street. When they started talking bad about him, they just like all those like young guys showed up with their resume or trying to work on it. He's like, well, it's kind of like that. And I was like, come on, man. I was like, this is great news. I was like, any kind of news and PR, it's fine. Like, end of the day, like it's whatever you think of yourself, not what everybody else thinks of you. So it's kind of the mindset.
Yeah, and I actually want to publicly say this about them. While you, again, not going to condone any decisions or ridiculous quotes that they've had here, there, the other place, but what I will say is they've been good at helping try to explain a lot of the kind of landminey, bumpy areas of our business. And they're not shy to do that, because the truth of the matter is these are wonderful communities. They're communities. Oh my gosh. Like when they're done right, we've seen homes appreciate, not depreciate. A mobile home appreciating in value. You've got folks who can't afford to replace a septic tank, and the mobile home park does that for them. And in a lot of cases, cut grass and maintain the well. I mean, drilling a new well is tens of thousands of dollars. And it's like a more expensive HOA, but they're paying for things that a lot of folks can't pay for. And also a lot of times folks who cannot get loans, you can sell your mobile homes and carry the notes, obviously abide by the Dodd-Frank Act, but Frank and Dave have done a reasonable job kind of addressing with courage the more prickly parts of our space that I believe are ultimately good for the market and people in general, but is really easy for someone trying to make a name for themselves, some air quotes journalist trying to make a name for himself or herself, trying to talk about the sins of the mobile home parks. So I got to commend them for that. And then Mike Conlin, dear friend of mine, love the guy to death. He is one of my closest mentors. I would say I have two really huge mentors in my life, and Mike is one of those too. So huge kudos to him. And also shout out to Frank and Dave. But quick pivot back to what we were talking about. Opportunity zones are everywhere in
There's a lot of them in these smaller markets, man.
A lot of them.
These opportunity zones, you've got these conservation easement little strategy that I kind of came across a couple of years ago. And when I did the research, with the exception of Florida, out of all the states that we're going into, it's an 80-20 split. 80% of all communities are in secondary, tertiary markets.
Yep.
And nobody's focusing on that. And it's funny, we're working on that website thing, and we looked at the banking, and 96, 97% of all banking business is done by community banks. I had no idea it was that big. And these community banks are the ones lending money on the mobile homes. They're the ones lending money on the parks, like the land home packages. Like, we're calling anytime we list one of these like secondary, tertiary market deals, we're starting to call the banks in the local areas to try and broker debt now. And it's you'd be surprised, a lot of them are going to do it. Like, they're like, yeah, we'll lend on it, and the terms on them are actually pretty reasonable. I was like, I think I got a 25-year ammo with no balloon. So that was, you'd be surprised. You're always going to have recourse or partial recourse on these smaller ones, but man, like they're there to wheel a deal. So, if 80% of the market is in those if 80% of the population of mobile home parks is in those secondary, tertiary markets, then I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer, you know what I mean? So like, a lot of my competitors, like, they try to primarily chase the primary markets. And I mean, every once in a while we'll get those deals. It's just, it's slim pickings, man. I mean, so it's kind of why we've always chosen to really focus on those other ones.
One thing I'll also say is, having dated a girl a long time ago from little old Mocksville, North Carolina. I also have Mocksville, North Carolina.
I've heard of it.
Davie County off I-40. I went to Wake Forest University, so Winston-Salem. So it's an air quote suburb, I guess, of Winston-Salem, and kind of never having lived outside of a big city, because I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina. Depending on how you slice it, Charlotte's the 15th biggest city in the country. Now, it's not by MSA, but by city limits. But anyways, I had no idea what it's like to not have an NFL team, like just a short drive from your house, right? Or an NBA team or an airport. And here I'm in Mocksville, North Carolina, and there's hardly anything there. And I've got friends in Whiteville, North Carolina, and I own now in Halifax County, North Carolina. And I've been driving up and down trying to understand more secondary and rural markets. And interestingly enough, what I've discovered is a lot of times these kind of reports about population are just flat wrong in the regard that the way they're being interpreted. So let me give you a great for example of that. So I own in Halifax County, as of this recording, I own Halifax County, North Carolina, next to a peanut farm. Absolute middle of nowhere. I've had two people be like, dude, you own there? I hunt there. There's nothing there. And I was just there last week, and the residents there are so kind. They are not going anywhere. They're not. They're not going anywhere. They pay their rent. They're good people. and we paved the roads. We spent a boatload of money, like over $130,000 paving the roads, and the people were just shocked. They're like, what? These roads have always been dirt forever. Like, we've been living in this mobile home park since 1990, and it's 2022, and you just paved the road. Wow, like, this is crazy. So they're really appreciative. But the thing, Max, that really caught me by surprise, I was very pleasantly surprised to learn is, man, a lot of these folks, they go to neighboring Roanoke Rapids, So what they end up doing is they have a quote unquote rural hub. So they have a city that they go to basically get all their needs done. The doctor's there, the Walmart's there, their job can oftentimes be there. And the cool thing about what the data shows is it just doesn't match. It just doesn't match. So if you looked at a Roanoke Rapids, you would think, man, there's a paper mill there. It's a stinky town and it is declining in population. But the truth of the matter is, man, you have to actually look at the greater county and really the MSA as a whole, because although perhaps there's not a lot of people in that town, the interesting thing about it is there are a lot of reasons for people outside of those towns to come into a rural hub like a Roanoke Rapids. So it's just really super interesting to me to learn how a small town, again, like a Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina, can just absolutely be hustling and bustling, and how the numbers just look awful on paper. But when you go and hang out in the little towns around Halifax, North Carolina, like Enfield, North Carolina, like Scotland Neck, like literally Halifax and Halifax County, and you talk to the residents and they're all like, oh yeah, I go, I live in Battleboro and I go to Roanoke Rapids or I go to Rocky Mount. And again, when you look at these numbers and you're like, gosh, Roanoke Rapids, it's so tiny, it just does not account for all the people who are willing to drive 20, 30, 40 minutes to go visit Walmart
Yeah.
or go to Applebee's or go here, there, or the other place. So these rural hubs can be incredible investments because your demand is really strong because people need to go and visit these rural hubs.
You'd be surprised, man. And sorry, my video kind of crashed there on us, but I'm back. But you'd be surprised. There's some markets here that I've messed with, and like there's a guy that it's pretty common to see like one person own the majority of the parks in these little towns. And every once in a while they'll let one of their deals free, and they're like, yeah, I'm thinking about downsizing or whatnot. But yeah, there's just a lot of opportunities out there. And as I'll take Mike Conlin's quote, as the consolidation of the industry continues, end quote, you're going to see a lot more of those people that are going around the country and buying all these parks in these small towns and then selling them to some hedge fund. I mean, we sold literally, there was a guy that had started buying parks in 11, amassed probably close to, I think it was like 30 parks in like 6 years, and then flipped it to a hedge fund. And I think his basis in it was probably around like 17, 18 mil. And we ended up selling it for like 34. So like, and it's, and then that hedge fund will then let off some of these other ones. They'll let a park or two out that doesn't fit their model and let them out to the open market. So it's interesting, man, because I'm just starting to see it more and more with these, there's more education. So wherever there's knowledge, there's going to be more people interested in, investing their time, money, and energy into buying in these areas. And if you try to be like, hey, I'm only focusing on primary markets, I'm like, well, good luck with that, dude. So it's not gonna work. You're gonna be looking for a long time because a lot of these primary market deals, like as soon as they come available, some broker's gonna know about it. He's gonna hand it off to somebody that he already knows that can close. So that's kind of the biggest variable that you have against is like a lot of relationships that are being built in these, secondary, tertiary markets. these park owners don't really know too many buyers out there like they do. But I mean, you know this, Ryan, more than anybody. Like, to buy deals, you've got to come in, sit down with a park owner, maintain the relationship, check in with them, and eventually they'll sell. And as a broker, I mean, that's literally what I do. And I mean, eventually they sell and we end up getting a listing. But there's deals that I've been working on for 10 years, and finally we get an opportunity to sell them just because, so there's way more of those opportunities to get in front of a park owner, that is open to, talking to somebody at that level, as a long-term play, because, those primary markets, it's a little different. It's just the market's different than the demand. I mean, it's kind of hard to describe, man. It's an uphill battle.
Yeah, I'm a big city guy till I die. So I feel you on the big cities. It's brutal. And I've always kind of made a name for myself by buying the really, really, really challenging stuff in big cities and make it really, really nice. Because to me, without any money starting out, that was how I got my go of it. And now for example, Charlotte, North Carolina, we've got 12 properties, over 400 lots. That would have, if I had told myself that when I got started in 2015, that I would have a dozen in my hometown, I would have been like, no way. But then when you do the math, if I got 400 units across 12 properties, that's less than 40 mobile home park. So in other words, I bought really small stuff that are well located, that are not air quote Charlotte, they're Charlotte. My residents work in Charlotte. And that's how I've made a name for myself. But for folks looking to buy 150 units and call it quits, or slow down at 300 units, and they're like, dude, I can't buy heavy value add stuff. I'm working a full-time job. Like, I can't go teach myself Spanish and live in a mobile home park like you and Ian did. There's some great stuff in secondary markets like Hickory, North Carolina. And
I love Hickory.
Hickory's a great spot. And there, if you can really, now it's like a surgeon and a scalpel, you really need to understand the market. For example, a good friend of mine owns in Martin County, North Carolina, and he's crushed it. His basis is nothing. He worked with his local county officials and got them to say yes to RVs. And he found that Martin County, which is neighboring to Greenville, North Carolina, where ECU is, a lot of travel doctors and nurses need RVs, and they come in and they do their thing and they go, and they don't want to be in the city. They want to be out of the city. And he's crushed it. He's bought it for a whole lot of nothing. He bought it in his 20s for a whole lot of nothing, and he's just annihilated it. So you can do really well if you don't have great ambition. If you're just a newbie, secondary and tertiary markets can be great. Max, I want to pivot a little bit into underwriting. So specifically, one big concern I think that the underwriting nerds listening in likely have, and it's a fair complaint, is look, these may cash flow really well. You might be able to get a 10 cap, and you might be able to get easily 20% plus cash on cash return on these. But every dollar of NOI you make at a 10 cap is less overall created value in terms of what the mobile home park is worth versus if you create a dollar of NOI at a 4 cap in Washington, D.C. So in other words, you'll do the same amount of work in Halifax, North Carolina, as you'll do in Washington, D.C., but you'll make more cash flow in the short run. But in the long run, and arguably, by the way, you'll be doing more work because it's harder to convince someone to move into Halifax County than Washington, D.C. Arguably, you're doing more work for less of a net worth gain, for less of a property gain. In other words, when you're looking at rural markets from an underwriting standpoint, you better make good cash flow, kind of to hit your IRR. What goes through your mind when you hear that argument? Because it's ubiquitous.
I mean, I kind of go under the mindset, man, and this is probably going to be, because I'm not going to get too granular, but I'll get a little granular. Good enough is good enough in my book. Like, if you can make a nice, return on your time and your energy and your money, and you're happy, like, I mean, that's good, dude. Like, what else do you need? Like, I mean, it's kind of my mindset these days. It's just like, like I bought this deal over in Ackworth, and it's a nice park. It's a nice little, small, like I think it's like 33 spaces or whatever. And I bought it knowing that there were some issues with the septic tank. So like my returns out of the first year were crap, man. Like I probably dumped probably around like $60,000 in the septic tank, knowing that I was going to. But I bought it at like a 9 cap, and I was like, you know what? I'm thinking long term. I'll invest. I'll just keep. I don't need to make money in my investment for a year. I don't need the money. So it's like my mindset is, every investor is going to be completely different, right? Your strategy is different from mine, and the people listening strategy is different from both of ours. Like I'm more of a buy a light rehab deal, because I mean my main business is brokering deals. Like that's what I do for a living. And then every once in a while I'll pick up a deal. My wife and it's really my wife's pet project. She'll turn around the deals and I'll help her turn it around. But for the most part, it's more the deals that are good enough. If it's like in Charlotte, like you said, like if it's kind of a hairy deal, if the metrics for the market make sense, then I'm going to jump into it. But as far as like underwriting is concerned, like I get really granular when I'm trying to extract capex from operating, because a lot of people mix the two, and when you come to valuation, that's probably the biggest variable that a lot of brokers deal with. Is just what's capex, what's operating, and we typically pro forma only the expense side because everybody underwrites their expenses super low. I mean, only time I've ever seen a park that underwrites at less than like a 20% expense ratio, if it's like dedicated roads, direct build, city water and sewer, all lot rent, and the owner manages it himself. Like that's the only time I'm like, well, maybe. But even still, like I try to boost it up to like at least 30% when it comes to that, just to add in some fluff, because there's always going to be a surprise on a park purchase. That's, as a broker, I've always noticed there's always drama when it comes to expenses, and it's just, I don't know. I'm a probability guy. When I look at underwriting, I look at facts, variables, and probabilities. And the facts are the facts. The variables are the things that could go sideways on you. And, if I'm gambling, I'm not much of a gambling man, but if I'm looking at a deal and the probabilities are in my favor on like these septic tanks, I knew I was going to have to jump in like maybe upwards of $75,000 to mess with them. But I was like gambling on probabilities that the market was going to sustain, because I mean I bought it and it was like $100 under market on lot rent, so like it was good enough. Like and that's kind of my mindset, dude. I'm a, like I said, I'm more of a big picture. Let me look at the market. Let me look at the area. If I feel confident about the amount of calls I'm getting on my test ad, I mean I'm gonna pull the trigger. I'm gonna buy it. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of my mindset. I know my buddy Giles, he's one of my best friends, and he's a hell of an underwriter. Like anytime we talk about underwriting, he's just like, for him, he's like, man, what about this? What about this? What about this? And I'm like, dude, like the market, like the demand is there. Like, so in the secondary, tertiary markets, you kind of have to get a little bit more granular and sharpen your pencil, because there's just more variables of shit going wrong, just to be blunt. I mean, you've got to work for it, and you've got to get your ducks in a row, just to make sure, like, that whether or not the county likes mobile home parks, whether or not you can find inventory to move in there, how many calls you're getting a day on your test ads, what other things that you can do, where the lot rents are going at, where do you see the trend, are there any things happening, calling the Chamber of Commerce, figuring out what's happening locally in the area. Like, I don't know if that answers your question, but I kind of went on a tangent there in general about underwriting, but we can get granular if you want a little more on it.
No, I think you nailed it, which is that there are different strategies for different people.
Yeah.
And any good underwriter will tell you, if I'm going to spend $75,000 preserving a lot that pays me $275 lot rent, it's just not the same as if you're in Tampa, Florida, with lot rent of $800 a lot, right? So if you ask me, why did I spend over $130,000 in Halifax County paving the roads when I know for a fact I'm not getting a huge rent increase there and it's not going to explode there. My answer is there's a different strategy there. Even
Yeah.
an individual like myself, I have different strategies and I have a diverse portfolio, as diverse as I can make it within one asset class. And you're very valid. You're very valid. Everybody who's doing analysis paralysis right now, listening to this, you're very valid with your concerns about lot rent growth. Because let's be honest, cap rates at a high level really drive pricing more than per pad drive pricing at a high level when you're dealing with private equity shops selling to private equity shops or bigger syndicators. Cap rates are
You got to be
means a
really
lot.
granular. Yeah, because like
Have
if
to
you're
be.
borrowing money, from people or raising money, like
Yep. Gotta be.
you can't underwrite the way Max says.
So look,
It's very different. It's a very different. I mean, it's different when you're using your own
I'm
money
using my own
versus
money.
borrowing
I'm
other.
the
Yeah,
same way,
it's
Max. I use my
yeah,
own money. So I can kind of go and experiment and tinker. And if I'm not
yeah.
using my own money, I'm using my friends and family's money. So I'm not going out and raising a boatload of capital for experiments, which effectively
I've
is
always been too
what that is.
chicken. You know what? To raise my money, dude.
Yeah.
The creature from Jekyll Island scared the crap out of me. The from all of that stuff. So I've always been, it's kind of inhibited my wealth. I know for a fact, but I've always saved my money and just casually bought deals on my own. And there's nothing wrong with raising money. There's nothing wrong with doing it my way. It's just every avenue and like I said, everybody's strategy is different. There's
Right.
no right or wrong way. So it's up to the listeners to decide, like, hey, do you want to do it this way? Or do you want to do a partner's way? Do you want to go do a hedge fund? Do you want to do a syndication? Like, it doesn't matter. Just jump in with both feet and figure it out. And, for me, it was right for me to do it where I just invested my own money and saved up my money. And then when I saw an opportunity, I would buy it. But I mean, I can't go out. Like, I know a couple of clients that go out and they buy 30 deals a year. And I'm like, wow, that's gnarly. I mean, I couldn't even imagine. Like, I'm doing like one or two and I'm like, that's enough for me, dude. So it's just everybody's strategy is completely different. So just
Yeah.
keep that in mind. There's no right or wrong way.
Max, where I want to end, perfect transition, because where I want to end off is you've had some really brutal stuff you've had to deal with in your personal life. And throw that on top of the fact that brokerage itself is an emotional roller coaster. It just is.
Yeah, it
I
is.
worked sales in car sales a long time ago, and man, it just pushes about every emotional button that you can push. And you and I share this in common. We love stoicism. Big fans of Ryan Holiday, Marcus Aurelius, the works. Max, for those, obviously we spare the personal details, but for those listening in who have a lot of personal challenges and even folks who don't, but are subject to a roller coaster and even people who aren't, like what has stoicism meant for you and what has it kind of helped you achieve in terms of inner peace in your life?
I love talking about this stuff, dude. I could talk about an hour for this stuff because I'm literally reading a book that Ryan Holiday put out. It's The Life of the Stoics. It's like a red book, and I'm really enjoying. I've been reading it every morning when I drink my coffee. But really, the biggest thing I take away is it's not what happens to you; it's how you react to it. And that's probably the biggest thing that I've gotten from Stoicism, at least from reading about um, Seneca, um, mentoring. What's that crazy guy from Rome?
Which
Zeno,
one?
not Zeno.
Which
The one
one?
that
Nero?
killed his, yeah, Nero. There we go. I had a hard time. I always get
It's okay.
their names are always jack me up.
Yeah.
Nero, and like the guy was basically Nero's like philosophy slave, and
Yep.
he probably wrote the most. And he's not the, like, from what it sounds like, it's like he's not even like the best Stoic philosopher. Like, he still pursued uh, political power, and he still pursued some of the things that most Stoics that you would think don't really care about. But it's just about, reacting the way. It's like I was talking to my wife today about it, because she always this is the worst thing you can say to your wife. And sometimes I'll say it as like, you don't have to align yourself with your emotions. It's a third party. And she gets mad sometimes when I tell her that, because it's just like, I'm so mad, or this and that and the other, this at work. But I mean, at the end of the day, like I'll sit down and like I'll have an issue with something or somebody, and I'll in the morning I'll journal about it. I've been really getting into that daily morning journal entries, and because like the monkey brain is really what is an inhibitor to your growth. If your mind is always looping, the mind loops are like the biggest inhibitor of your growth that I can imagine now. Is just like if you think about something and it constantly is coming back in your mind and it keeps on looping and looping and looping, whether it's like a situation or what somebody told you, or my hair is messed up today, or whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. If you're looping about it, you probably need to unpack it somewhere. And that's kind of the biggest thing, because I've been through a lot of stuff with the Marine Corps, my family, people that I've worked with, and I wish, and a lot of them I probably was treated not the best, but I only wish them the best, because at the end of the day, like, they have to look out for themselves, and I totally respect that, and I got to look out for myself. So I mean, it's there's a lot of things that will happen in your life, whether you don't have any money, or you're broke, or you come from nothing and you don't have parents. Like those are all bits and pieces of your story, and you should really value a lot of the things, because there's a lot of good things that come out of having parents and not having parents. Like there's a lot of value, being resourceful, that you get out of it. So I would really recommend, just putting your heels down and really trying to dissect what you can learn out of every crappy situation in your life. That way it'll make you a better human being, a better leader, and leave the legacy that you want for your family. So that's really what I've been focusing on lately, is just, we for this website that we're working on, we went to a venture capitalist, and my ego was very, very big. I had a huge ego going in there, and I was like, I caught myself, being like, oh, I got this. This is a great opportunity. I'm so stoked. And yeah, like, you're lucky to hear that we're talking to you, this guy. And at the end of the day, like, I realized what I was doing, and I was like, you know what, man, like, this isn't what I need to be around. The energy, like, because the guy was super egomaniac, and I was just like kind of in awe because of his background and my background, both military. But I was just like, that's not the energy I want to be around. So we ended up, now we're doing our self-funding thing, but it's you catch yourself. Like, stoicism is a constant I don't want to say struggle, battle, learning curve. Like, just because you're stoic on one instance doesn't mean you're going to be stoic on every instance. Like, you get emotional. I got emotional this morning because the damn contractors didn't show up to fix my office like he said he would. He's like, calls me 10 minutes. Oh, I'm not making it. I'm like, well, bro, I just woke up super early to make sure you were going to get in here. Then you didn't even show up. And then we get to, like, it's just, I mean, it's just a laundry list. So you just have to, like, kind of be like the duck, man, and just keep moving forward, and, keep your eye on the ball, what the prize is, just sweat it out.
I'll say two things and we'll wrap it up here. First and foremost, Dave Attell, hilarious comedian, had a great quote that really helped humanize people that we idolize, where the joke in so many words goes, I always thought my dad was a superhero, and then I became an adult and I just realized he was a drunk guy in a cape.
That's right.
And it just helps put into perspective. Funny guy, I love David Tell. It just helps put into perspective that people we idolize, that we think are great, even the best Stoics of all time, they're human. And if you study cognitive psychology, you know that almost every stimuli goes through your amygdala before it makes its way to your prefrontal cortex. In other words, you will react emotionally before you have a chance to rationally think about it, because your amygdala, we believe, is right. Your amygdala is feelings, your prefrontal cortex is your higher level thinking and critical thinking. And so you will react emotionally to everything you experience before you have a chance to think about it. And we're all human at the end of the day. And then I'll also say something that I heard, which blew my mind. Anger is not a root cause most of the time, it's a symptom. Anger blossoms out of jealousy or loneliness or lack of inclusion or fear. Oftentimes for me personally, when I get scared, I get mad. It's really weird.
Yeah, dude.
It's
It's crazy. Like every human emotion is based off of fear and love.
Yeah. And look, the point I'm ultimately trying to make here is we're always going to be feeling emotions, no matter how humdrum you feel your personality is or how loud and passionate you are. Like everybody around me tells me I'm really loud and passionate. It doesn't matter where you fall on that spectrum. You're going to react emotionally first. You're not a robot. You're not anywhere close to
Yeah.
a robot. And also, when you're dealing with other folks, a lot of times you're going to be tempted to address the anger when it's got nothing to do with anger. It's a conversation again about jealousy or loneliness or this, that, and the other thing. So it's just so important whether you study up on Stoicism or you like reading Robert Greene, who's fantastic for a whole slew of reasons.
Yeah.
It's just so important to take time to breathe and listen to your own emotions and really just reflect on them. And Max, we could make a whole podcast episode about this.
I'm all about it,
So
dude. I'll do another one. We'll talk about podcasts and
I love
life
it, dude.
and emotions all day.
Max, I'm going to drop your info in the show notes, but for those listening in, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, man. Thanks for that. Give me a call at 678-932-0200, 678-932-0200, or email me at info@themhpbroker.com, info@themhpbroker.com. We have a buyer's guide that if you register at our website, it's a nice little ebook, talks about conservation easements, talks about bonus depreciation, talks about opportunity zones. Like if you need any referrals, anything like that's on your journey for mobile home parks, if you got a deal that you need some help on as far as like rental comps, sales comps, reach out to me. Happy to help. My job is to add as much value to your journey. So I'm happy to provide as much information as I humanly can, or input, or make introductions. Like I said, like this is all I do every day. And like I live, breathe, and eat the mobile home park business, man. So reach out. Happy to help where I can, and let's keep making some money together, or let's make some money together.
Max, you rock, man. Thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, dude. Have a good day. Thanks, Ryan.
You too.
Entrepreneurs make mistakes, but with the overwhelming amount of free information out there, you don't have to be doomed to making those same mistakes. You just have to find a consolidated version of the most important information. What if I told you I'll gift you all of my DD mistakes I've made over the years for free? Just leave me a 5-star review, screenshot the review after it goes live, and email it to me at my website, archimedesgrp.com. Afterwards, join our Facebook group, Mobile Home Park Mastermind. You'll find hundreds of other mobile home park owners sharing ideas, contractors, and deals. It's free to join, and we would absolutely love having you join us.